Hey, it's Adrian Hernandez here. Before we get into this week 17 preview between the Raiders and the 49ers, just really quick, want to wish you and yours a happy new year. Of course, this will be the final game preview before 2023. One more regular season game to go. And of course, a lot of stuff has happened with the Raiders this week, which you've seen on some of the content we've dropped this week. But wanted to wish you a happy new year to you and yours, but also a huge thank you. At the beginning of this year, we had less than 30 subscribers. I really didn't use my YouTube to drop any content. And this year, we made an emphasis on putting out as much stuff as we could, whether it's YouTube videos, whether it's the shorts. And we went from less than 30 to over 630. So thank you guys so much. As you can see behind me, green screen, we got Elgato cam links and cameras getting ready and getting prepped. Just trying to elevate the production here as we head into 2023. And as always, thank you for subscribing. If you haven't, please click that button down below. Instagram, Twitter, all of that information on the channel. Thank you guys so much. And here it is. Enjoy your preview. Week 17, Raiders versus the 49ers by Derek Carr. Hey, it's 1140 The Bet, Audacy Sports. Adrian Hernandez here, joined by Scott Goldbranson, of course, one of the hosts of Silver and Black Today, the Audacy original podcast. And you can hear him here on 1140 The Bet, our sister station 98.5 The Fan. You can hear him in Kansas City, Fresno, throughout the country today. I just wanted to preview the 49ers versus the Raiders. Said 1 o'clock, things were going to be good. And then the Raiders drop a bombshell. So if you're listening to this on Friday, we appreciate you, but we're speeding this up. We're dropping this today. Of course, hours from the Raiders announcing that Derek Carr has been benched for the rest of the season following a 3-interception performance against the Steelers on Christmas Eve, which means Derek Carr will miss only his 4th and 5th game as a Raider in his 9-year career. So with all that being said, Scott, what's your instant reaction?
Not surprised, only surprised at the timing. You know, we really felt like Mo and I, we talked about it on our show, our mailbag show from this morning, where we said, hey, probably not till Friday, right? Because why would you give the opposing team, in this case, the 49ers, a heads up that you're starting a different quarterback so that they prep for them? So I was surprised by that. But knowing that Derek Carr in his contract, everybody knows about the out, of course, that's been talked about for weeks now. At the end of the season, but knowing he had $40+ million guaranteed if he continued to play and got hurt, let's say something, God forbid, we don't like anybody getting hurt. If Derek Carr would have played these final 2 weeks, gotten hurt, the Raiders would have had to pay him not only $40 million, but another $8 million for 2024. So it made a lot of sense. Also, Derek Carr just has not played well, and the game in Pittsburgh was another example of that. And so to give Jarrett Stidham the opportunity to roll out there with some of that offense and see what happened, it just makes sense at this point in the season, especially Adrian, if you're the Raiders and you plan on moving on from Derek Carr. Now, we didn't know that for sure. We've been guessing, all of us. It's been the topic of conversation, but certainly this move pushes us over the edge, I think, in that the Raiders truly are looking past Derek Carr. Now, could they do something, restructure his contract, bring him back? Maybe. It just doesn't appear that's going to happen.
And we're going to touch base here on this contract situation and everything, kind of lay it out for everyone here in a second. Earlier today during the press conference, McDaniel said that this benching isn't just a decision about Derek Carr's future, that it's also a chance to evaluate a young player in Jarrett Stidham. That's just the coach trying to keep the peace until both sides can talk in the offseason, right?
I agree 100%. I mean, listen, I always get into little spats with Raider Nation out there because they always say, well, he said this. I'm like, yeah, but the coach is not going. I don't care what coach you are. Even if you're planning on moving on from the player, you don't throw people under the bus. You don't do that. It's a small league when you talk about the number of people that are employed. You never know when you're going to come down and be in touch with somebody later in your career, a different stop, whatever. And not only that, but Derek Carr deserves a little bit of face saving, right? Because he's been a Raider for his entire career. He's a great dude. I mean, what he's done in the community, not only in Las Vegas in this short time there, but in Fresno with Children's Hospital in Fresno, all these different things. He is a good human being. And so he's giving him the opportunity to save a little face, which you can appreciate a coach doing.
Yeah, 100%. And let's touch base on this contract situation. Like you said, him being benched eliminates the risk of him getting injured. The team's on the hook for $40.4 million over the next 2 years. Of course, Derek Carr signed that 3-year, $121.5 million contract last offseason. Only $25 million was guaranteed, and then that out that you talked about, which leaves the Raiders, to $5.6 million in a dead cap hit. With all that being said, there is some in Raiders Nation saying, hey, does this mean there's a chance of restructuring this deal, or is this relationship just too fractured now with this decision?
Yeah, I think that there was. We've talked about it, Mo and I, on our show a lot, to say, well, maybe they do that. Maybe they say, hey, listen, we need to go draft. Either way, even if Derek Carr had a good year, I think drafting a young quarterback was a must. Now, drafting in the first round, maybe not. If you keep Carr and you really had played well and thought that he was going to go another 3 years in the silver and black uniform. But now with this situation, this tells me they're looking forward, and I don't see a restructure happening. I think you have to let Derek Carr make his choice, and his choice is try to trade me. Let me know what teams are interested, and I'll tell you if I go to those teams, because he has a no trade clause. Number two is, as he said, and I say threatened, I don't mean it in that ominous way. He's threatened, hey, I don't want to play in another uniform, so I might just retire. So he may walk away. And I believe him, Adrian. I really do. Again, he's a guy strong in his faith. He has a Christian conference that he runs every year that he does. He preaches at his own church, both in Las Vegas and in Fresno. So I think this guy's got a lot to do. He's a young man, maybe not in football years, but in overall years, he's a young dude. So he's got an opportunity to go do that. I think he could walk away if the Raiders do release him and just call it a career.
Wow. And that just adds to the complex. Like, there's a lot of angles to approach this, not only for Derek Carr and the team. So I want to ask you this before I forget. Obviously, there's a star wide receiver in that locker room in Davante Adams, who said he wanted to come here to not only play with his college quarterback and Derek Carr. He wanted stability at quarterback because of Aaron Rodgers every year. Will he retire? Blah, 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 blah. Loved the Raiders, etc. And now this has happened. And also, I think he's liking Packers tweets on Twitter, which some people really think that's important. To me, that doesn't matter. But to you, what do you think's going through Davante's head right now?
Well, I'm sure it's emotional, right? Knowing that perhaps the guy you came to play with to a certain degree might go away. They're good friends. They were good friends. By the way, when he was on the Packers and Carr was on the Raiders, they were still friends. Yeah. So if Carr moves on, guess what? They'll still be friends. They're lifelong friends, and you get that, and you can appreciate that. I think people are making too much out of it. He just signed a record-breaking, at the time, deal for a wide receiver in the NFL. He set the market in the NFL. He's had a good year. He's also been forgotten at times. Is some of that on Derek Carr? Yes. Is some of that on Josh McDaniels? Absolutely. So he wanted to be a Raider. He grew up a Raiders fan, and I just don't think, I try to get people to understand this. I know it's football, and we're talking about $1 billion, but it's just like you and I, Adrian. We've had people we've worked with in this business, right? You recently, that you love. They're good friends. You love them. You love working with them. And for whatever reason, they decide either to go by their choice or without their own choice. And we continue on, right? It's not like we're going to all just quit our jobs because our friend quit. And I think that's where we're at with this. I think Davante Adams will probably be sad and be upset. But at the same time, if he knows what the Raiders are planning, and the Raiders brass, knowing that he's an important leader on their team, sit down with him and say, hey, listen, we know you're going to be upset. Derek's going to be gone, but here's our plan. We want you in on it. You're a big part of it. That's why we signed you to this extension.
No, 100%. It's 1140 The Bet. Scott Gobranson joining us, of course, from the Audacy original podcast, Silver and Black today. And I also want to talk about this section of Raiders Nation, Raiders Twitter, because I kind of want to get every angle that we possibly can here in this short time. But those that are of the belief that Derek Carr was a pretty solid quarterback coming into this year, that had the best pieces he's ever had in his career, a lot of injuries this year, but football's football, but of course also a new coaching staff. And with that new coaching staff, Derek Carr had the worst year of his professional career. Is there any blame, or is there any credence to that, hey, what's up with this coaching staff, that Derek Carr suddenly is having the worst month and worst career of his year?
Well, I'll put it to you this way. It's not all Derek Carr's fault. Anybody who asserts that the Raiders and where they're at right now is because of Derek Carr is false. Is he partly to blame for it? Absolutely. He is the quarterback. Adrian, you cover the league. There is no more important position in the NFL than quarterback. Yes, it's a team game, but if you don't have a good, ask the New York Jets how they're doing with a playoff roster, but without a quarterback. What are they doing? They're on the outside looking in because they don't have a quarterback. So you understand that. At the same time, I would say, yes, coaching. Has Josh McDaniels committed coaching malpractice a lot of this year? I believe he has. I really do. I think he's really screwed up. He's not been able to manage games well. This is why they give up big leads partially. So some of that and a lot of that is on the coaching staff, no question. But some of it is also on Derek Carr. You could not blame one person, one coach, one player for everything. But I will tell you that Josh McDaniels was not on the field and did not throw the ball that was overthrown to Hunter Renfrow against the Steelers. Josh McDaniels does not make bad decisions at the line when throwing the football. It's not his deal. That's Derek Carr's responsibility. You have to own that. He owns that. Just like the defense. When the defense gives up points or when it doesn't do its job, it deserves some of the blame too. The defense is short on talent. So you look at all of these things, it's a multiple levels of failure. But in the NFL, the highest paid position and the position with the most responsibility, fair and unfair at times, is the quarterback. So that's how it's all going to go down.
And I do want to give a shout out to Marcus Johnson, who covers the Raiders. You can follow him on Twitter at MarkJohnNFL. I had this really interesting tidbit earlier today as all the chaos was erupting. Darren Waller only played 21 snaps on Saturday against the Steelers, and I don't have the exact snap count. I know he didn't play much against the Rams, obviously coming back from injury, but only 21 snaps. Some would say that that's kind of a benching as well. Are these signs that people aren't paying attention to that, hey, I don't think Josh McDaniels and Darren Waller kind of gel? This season's been very, very weird for Darren throughout this. And from the moment he signed that contract up until now.
Yeah, no, I think so. And if it's me, I'll be completely frank with you. They got to trade Darren Waller as soon as they possibly can. If they can get good value for him, which I think they can, they got to do it. Because listen, here's the deal. Your biggest asset is your availability. Darren Waller has not been available. I know injuries happen, but if you look at last year and this year, he's not been healthy. Okay. Forget all the off the court stuff or off the field stuff that people want to criticize him for, which I defended him for, going with Kelsey Plum to the Padres game or going to the WNBA games. I had no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is not his contract on his end. His contract from Dave Ziegler was ill-advised. It was given to him at the wrong time. He had 2 years left on his existing deal. The Raiders front office owns that mistake, not Darren Waller. Darren Waller is who he is. He's a great guy. We all know his story. He's done more for humanity in the last couple years in recovery to help others than a lot of people do in a lifetime. So good for him. But I think for the Raiders now, where they're at with that contract and the fact that he's now over 31 years old, you got to get rid of it. And I think you're right. I think you saw in that game them saying, you know what, he's just not 100%. So why are we going to put him out there? We need to reserve him. And if we can get good value for him, then let's go ahead and make that trade. And I think they need to.
It is going to be a busy offseason for the Raiders. Before we let you go, I have some hypotheticals. I'm just going to drop these two, all right? And we're going to have a whole offseason to get into them. But okay, first things first. I'm starting the campaign right here, right now. I'm going to have to switch my Twitter banner.
Don't say Baker Mayfield. Don't say Baker Mayfield.
Absolutely not. He has a job at Progressive or Allstate that he needs to get to here shortly. Lamar Jackson.
Oh, I lost it. Lamar Jackson.
We're doing it again, and we're going to edit it. All right,
okay.
Here we go. I got so excited the microphone fell off.
That's okay. It happens, man.
Lamar Jackson as a Las Vegas Raider. How do you feel about this?
I don't think it's possible. Listen, I love Lamar Jackson. I know a lot of fans are putting up their Photoshopped pictures of Lamar Jackson in the silver and black, like they did with Tom Brady the last couple of years. And I think Lamar Jackson is an amazing athlete. And I understand not happy, or at least there's some issues in Baltimore with what's going on there. I just don't see it happening because I think with the Raiders and what they need to do, they are not in a win now mode. I'm sorry, Raider Nation. They're not.
Really?
So they're not in a win. What are they? They don't have a defense to win. They don't have overall. They haven't proven on offense that they can do it. I think what you have to do, you have to play chess, Adrian. You can't play checkers. Okay. You have to go develop a young quarterback. The most valuable thing in the NFL is a top line quarterback on a rookie deal. Okay. So you look at how the Chiefs built their powerhouse, right? Patrick Mahomes, of course. Sometimes you get lucky and sometimes you get unlucky when you draft a quarterback that high, but you need a quarterback on a rookie deal because you got to beef up the defensive line. You got to get, some cornerbacks, some safety, some linebackers, another couple offensive linemen. There's a lot of needs here for this Raiders roster that take money. So you need to get as young as you possibly can, even at the quarterback position, which I think precludes them from doing that. Now, maybe Dave Ziegler goes nuts and goes out and signs somebody to a contract. I just don't see Lamar Jackson because of the money involved.
And I just, as you say that, I'm picturing Mark Davis right now, fly on the wall of what he's thinking in his office right now.
Yeah.
Last hypothetical, you bring up a young quarterback, draft day trade.
Yeah.
Bears Raiders. We send Devontae Adams to Chicago and we get the second overall pick in the draft.
Wow.
So Fields gets his wide receiver and we get a new franchise quarterback. Everyone's happy all around, right?
Well, yeah. So that's a tough one. You know what? I would not poo-poo that trade because as much as I love Devontae Adams, I just told you that this team is going to have to take a step back. I'm not saying they're going to be bad for 5 years, but they might tread water for a year or so and then be able to catapult back into the playoffs here after another season. So Devontae Adams, yeah, he's got a lot of value. And so if you're going to go that route and you really want to retool, then maybe you could do something like that. I still think, though, the Raiders, even where they're at now, even if they lose these 2 games against the 49ers and then the last game of the season against Kansas City, I think that the Raiders are going to have to trade up in the first round if they can. Because I think even at best, I think they could, the way I did my math is they could maybe get to 6 or 7, right, in the draft. They're at 9 right now. And so then you'd have to trade up because there are 5 teams legitimately who want a young quarterback. And they're all picking in the first 8 picks in the draft. So it's going to be tough for the Raiders. But yeah, Devontae Adams, could he be traded? I think he could. It would be tough for this team going into a situation where they have a quarterback and they have a star on defense, but no star on offense, and they might lose Josh Jacobs. To trade Devontae Adams might be tough for the season ticket holder situation, but we'll see, man. Anything can happen. I'm telling you.
This is crazy. We didn't even have enough time to get into Josh Jacobs, which is what I really wanted to talk about in this post-game comments. But look, Scott, before we get you out of here, I know you already dropped the podcast earlier this week. I know more is coming, obviously, with the news. So just for everybody, what content's coming here shortly?
Well, go check out the podcast Silver and Black today, an Audacy original. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts. And our latest show, which, of course, we did late Wednesday for Thursday. We did a live show to talk about this, just like we're talking about now, Adrian. So go check that out as well. And then Sunday after the game, we'll have our live post-game show. All of those things you can catch on. You can also catch our show on Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. on 98.5 The Fan. I think 4 a.m. for those of you working down on the strip in the middle of the night, working graveyard shift, you can hear it at 4 a.m. on 1140 The Bet. So that's where they can find us. They can also follow us on Twitter at SNB Today.
And I'll leave it with this. Raider Nation, you're having a game on New Year's Day against a rival. Liquor and alcohol is going to be involved. Let's not have a malice in the palace situation, please. Right. Leave Allegiant Stadium all nice, okay?
That's
Scott,
right.
As always, we'll talk to you here shortly. Happy New Year. If we don't get to talk to you before the end of the year, thank you so much for joining us throughout the year. All the great content and insight on Raider Nation.
Adrian, I appreciate you, man. You have a great new year, you and your family, and we'll talk to you again, I'm sure, in the near future.
There it is, 1140 The Bet. Boom, perfect. Oh my God, that was my most flubbering interview I've ever done. Jesus Christ, I couldn't talk. But listen, I know you got to do a million different things, so thank you for the time, and we'll talk to you.
No worries.
All right.
Okay, buddy. Take care of yourself.
Take care, Scott. Peace.
Bye-bye.
Hey, this is 1140 The Bet, Las Vegas, Audacy Sports, as well as we're battling the weather. Hopefully a little bit better than the Raiders did against the Steelers on Christmas Eve. Adrian Hernandez here. Joining us right now is beat writer who covers the 49ers for NBC Sports Bay Area, Jennifer Lee Chan. First off, happy holidays, Jennifer. Thank you for joining us. And I guess my first question is, how does it feel covering a team that had playoff expectations that's actually meeting them?
It's been good. It's been a wild ride this year, especially starting with Trey Lance, going to Jimmy Garoppolo, and now Brock Purdy. So it's been a roller coaster. It's been interesting. They started off with a pretty bad record, and now they've won, how many straight games, and it's they're headed to the playoffs. So here we go.
I also need to point out, shout out to the NFL schedule makers who scheduled this game on New Year's Day. Already a lot of liquor and alcohol involved in any NFL game, but to do it in Las Vegas, it might be entertaining in the stands more than on the football field because of how the Raiders are playing. But before we get into the 49ers, I always love asking this from an outside perspective, but what have you thought of Josh McDaniels' first year and just everything that's gone on in the disappointing year the Raiders have had?
It's been a soap opera for you guys. That's for sure. It's been interesting to watch. I mean, that last game, the finish to that. I mean, it's never a dull moment with the Raiders ever. So it's been exciting to watch, and hopefully it'll be a good matchup on Sunday.
No, absolutely. And as we get into the 49ers, I want to ask you, obviously, Brock Purdy, the man of the year, apparently the man of the moment. And when I'm looking at the 49ers here, 3 out of the past 4 games, they've put up more than 30 plus points. Like, how much of a bad look or an indictment is it on Trey Lance that he couldn't lead this team to get that type of production?
I don't think it's necessarily that. 'Cause Trey Lance doesn't have that much experience. You look at Brock Purdy's college career; he had 4 years as a starter. He played football since he was, 6 or 7 years old, starting in flag football. So, I mean, he's been preparing for this for, you know, 15, 16 years. He just turned 23 yesterday. So, I mean, it's been a long time that he's been playing football and dreaming about it. And he's only 6'1", and he knew that that was one of his kind of his, I guess, there's something going against him. So he's been working so hard to kind of combat his shortcomings, literally. And because of his work ethic and what he's been doing to be able to like go through his progressions, read defenses, all of those things that he's worked so hard at, it's made him such a better player. And he has so much more experience than Trey Lance. So it's not surprising that Brock Purdy has been successful, especially with Kyle Shanahan as a head coach, because Kyle Shanahan will put guys in the best position possible, play off their strengths. Trey Lance just doesn't have a lot of experience. So, those were his first real NFL starts, his first offseason as the starter. So, I mean, it was going to be a growing learning process anyway. So I think, it's unfortunate that he got hurt in week 2. And, he's kind of just an unknown at this point. I mean, you know what you're getting with Brock Purdy because he has so much game film out there.
What has been the most interesting thing, I guess, learning about Brock Purdy as he's been introduced to the football world coming out of nowhere, it seems essentially?
I think the most surprising thing is that, guys can be really successful in college for 4 years, and then he just hasn't really, skipped a beat at all. He's kept it moving. He's been super productive in the NFL, especially when you consider how tight the windows are and how much faster the game is. It's pretty impressive that he's had the production that he's had. And yes, like I said, Kyle Shanahan gives him the best possible way to play the game, and he gives him as much help as possible. He's surrounded by a great supporting cast, so he's got that going for him. But still, the speed in the windows in the NFL is so much different than college.
And you brought it up, team wasn't off to a good start. Now they're on this win streak. To you, do you get the sense that this team has already peaked, or is this something that's sustainable as we head into the playoffs?
I mean, you look at the fact that Deebo Samuel has been out, he's going to come back, and Elijah Mitchell are going to come back. I don't think they've hit their peak yet. They've got all those players, on the offense, star players. I mean, you look at it, just those two, and then you have Christian McCaffrey, George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk, Kyle Juszczyk. I mean, that group is such a great supporting cast for Brock Purdy as a rookie. I don't think there's a rookie quarterback that could have come into a better situation. And the same thing for Trey Lance. I think if Trey Lance had that full season, I think he would have kind of gotten into a rhythm and would have been, I don't know if, it's your guess as good as mine if he be as productive as Brock Purdy, but he definitely would be productive just because he's got that surrounding, supporting cast around him.
And you bring up some of the injuries. I think it's kind of interesting. What's your sense of, do you think Kyle Shanahan is going to try to go after this second seed in the NFC, or kind of rest the players these final 2 weeks to get everyone healthy for the playoff race?
I think they're gonna be careful with guys like Deebo Samuel coming back and Elijah Mitchell, because you don't want them, when guys are off the field, yes, they can be in good shape, but they're not in football shape. So there's a
Yeah.
little bit of rust. I don't think they're going to push them to play a bunch of snaps. I think they're going to have them come back gradually. But he did say this week that he doesn't want to have guys sit because then they kind of lose their momentum. They want to keep guys on the field. maybe just not as much as they have in the past. Like Christian McCaffrey had that one game where he had like 30 carries. They don't want to do that. They want to keep it a little bit more limited, like they did the last week and against the Washington Commanders, and kind of, keep the momentum rolling. Guys need to keep their feet wet in the game, stay in game shape. They don't want to have guys sit, just rotational basis. So while I think they do want the second seed, I don't think it's something they're going to, break the bank for.
Yeah, it's 11:40 The Bet. Jennifer Lee Chan, beat writer for the NBC Sports Bay Area, covering the 49ers, joining us as we preview the Raiders versus the 49ers. I think one of the matchups that I'm going to love to see is on the defensive end for both teams. Nick Bosa, Max Crosby. Nick obviously having a superb year. If you could just talk about his dominance and, potentially being defensive player of the year.
A lot of people are wondering if he could match last year's sack total, and he already has. So he's got 17 and a half on the season. He kind of has 17 out of the season. He's got that one that was during a 2-point conversion that doesn't necessarily count, unfortunately, again, on the stat sheet. But, his eyes are set on getting 2 more to match Aldon Smith's record for, single season career sack totals. And if he gets 1 more than that, obviously he'd be the franchise leader. So, he is really unstoppable. It's one of the hardest guys, I think, for an offensive tackle to go against. He switches sides, so he's not always going against the left tackle. Sometimes he'll go against the right. And I've talked to beat writers that cover opposing teams, and sometimes, you just watch him in a game and his motor is crazy. His cardiovascular strength, his endurance is crazy, and just his technique. He talked this week about how he used to watch film and it used to kind of cloud his mind a little bit because he had a certain plan going forward for every move that he wanted to do.
Yeah.
Now he really studies film harder. So he kind of caters his pass rush to the player he's going against. So, he's just turned it into like a fine art of pass rushing. And I think he's only going to get better.
Well, just to let you know, the Raiders, I stopped counting last week, but up until last week, 15 different variations of that offensive line have hit the field in the regular season. So Nick Bosa is going to be eating like it's Thanksgiving this upcoming week. It should be fun to see him and Max Crosby. And before we get you out of here, I guess the moment of truth, I need a prediction for how far do you think this 49ers team can go, and what you truly feel is the ceiling for them.
I feel like it's the same momentum as last year. They could get to the NFC Championship game, and you look at the NFC, there are some good, the East is really good, but there's some weak spots as well. So I think the Niners could take advantage of it, especially if they stay healthy through the end of the season. If they keep this going, they've got a lot of momentum going into the postseason.
There it is. Jennifer Lee Chan joining us. Thank you so much. Hope you had a wonderful holidays. Happy New Year. We'll see you at Allegiant Stadium.
All right. Sounds good. I'm excited to see the stadium.